The story began with a man named Jirei Lero, who had once dreamed of becoming a hero. He had imagined wielding a shining holy sword, slaughtering demons, defeating the demon lord, marrying the kingdom's princess, becoming king, and living happily ever after. There had been a time when he admired stories like those. However, that was now a thing of the past. One day, a girl suddenly appeared and she asked to join her party. Jirei was caught by surprise as she looked at him with sparkling eyes while he remained silent. He abruptly shut the door, apologized, and insisted that he was fine. The girl continued knocking on the door, irritating him. He slowly opened it just enough to warn her that if she did not quiet down, he would report her to the knights. She explained that she was neither trying to sell anything nor recruit him into a religious organization. She then pushed the door open, introduced herself as Retinoa Innocent, and mentioned that her close friends called her Reti. Jirei informed Retinoa that since she had broken his door, she would have to reimburse him for it. She readily agreed and said she had an even better suggestion. She wanted him to join her hero's party. She intended to prepare a palace for him to live in, and cute girls would also accompany them, believing it to be an amazing arrangement. Jirei was both surprised and puzzled as he realized that Reti was one of the heroes of the current generation. He recalled that when a person was chosen by a holy sword, a holy mark would appear somewhere on their body, allowing them to become a hero. Retinoa Innocent had been chosen by the holy sword Gran Virgu. The current generation had produced an abundant harvest of heroes, with their number already reaching double digits, and he had recently heard that another hero with black hair had been chosen. Since black hair was unusual, he assumed there had been some sort of misunderstanding, which only annoyed him. As Reti looked at him excitedly, Jirei sighed and wondered why such a great hero had come to invite someone like him into her party. He apologized and believed she had mistaken him for someone else. He showed her his necklace, revealing that he was only a D-rank adventurer. Reti was surprised but insisted she had found the right person. She realized that Jirei still did not remember her, so she held her hair on both sides as though tying it into a ponytail in an attempt to jog his memory. Jirei was startled before finally remembering that 5 years earlier, while excessively overhunting great bears, he had encountered Reti. At that time, he had saved her from a great bear's attack. He became visibly uncomfortable as Reti revealed that she had admired him ever since and that he had inspired her to become a hero. She still remembered the words he had spoken before they parted. He had told her not to cry, to endure it because only weaklings cried, and that if she could not endure it, then she should become a hero. If she became a hero, she would no longer be weak or need to cry, and she would be able to fulfill her dreams. Since then, whenever she felt sad, she had tried to laugh instead of crying in order to become a hero. As Reti recalled those words, Jirei shouted in embarrassment for her to stop bringing up his dark past. He grabbed her by the shoulders and shook her, desperately wanting her to forget everything immediately. Reti could not understand why she should forget something she considered wonderful, believing those parting words had been great. She explained that when she saw him in town, she had believed it was fate. She had recognized him immediately, and even back then, she remembered that his eyes had been cloudy. Jirei fell silent before letting out a sigh. He pointed out that she had already become a hero, so there was no reason for her to invite him into her party, and he questioned why she still wanted him. Reti was surprised and admitted that being in the same party as him had been her goal all along. Jirei was left stunned as she waited for his answer. He refused to join. She smiled at him, making him feel relieved, but she immediately smiled again with excitement and acted as though she had not heard his response. Jirei shouted that she had clearly heard him and that he was definitely not joining. She insisted that she could not hear him. He repeated that he would not join her party, while she continued insisting that he should join it. After a while, Jirei agreed to join her party. Reti celebrated, but he clarified that he would only join for a little while. She wished it would last 50 years. He questioned whether she even understood what a little while meant and explained that staying until her first great achievement would be acceptable to him. She agreed before extending it until the demon lord was defeated and the world was saved. She welcomed him to the party, leaving him surprised while she remained excited. Jirei then asked what party he was supposed to join. Reti explained that it was the black-haired hero's party because he had black hair. In response, Jirei said that he would leave an application form at the guild and asked if she could return another day. She agreed, said she would come back another day, and bid him farewell. After she left, Jirei sighed and decided it was time to leave. He immediately ran, thinking that fighting the demon lord now had to be some kind of joke. In the past, he had genuinely wanted to become a hero. To achieve that dream, he had drunk countless horrible tasting potions to increase his magic power while continuously honing both his magic and swordsmanship. For over 10 years, he repeatedly ventured into dangerous battles against demons that often brought him close to death. After all of that, he had simply waited for the holy mark to appear somewhere on his body, believing that once it did, he would become a hero. That had been the stage he had been waiting for. At that point, his wish would have been fulfilled. If he had to say it honestly, he had never truly admired heroes themselves. What appealed to him was becoming king and living a happy, carefree life. His ideal future had been to become a hero, defeat the demon lord, be crowned king, and then spend every day idly while others attended to his needs. In the past, while eating at a restaurant, he had overheard a conversation at the next table. Someone remarked that heroes had it rough, spending every single day subjugating demons without proper rest. They credited the heroes and the knights for allowing everyone else to enjoy peace. Jiraiya had listened in surprise. Another man admitted that he had once wanted to become a hero as well, but he had heard that even becoming king meant remaining busy, so nothing really changed. The other man laughed, remarking that someone who spent the day drinking alcohol and fooling around with women could never become a hero. They both laughed together. Jiraiya had been furious, feeling as though they were making fun of him. Thinking about all the time and effort he had devoted to that dream, he made the decision to earn only enough to live comfortably and spend the rest of his days leisurely. A day later, Jiraiya arrived at the Universal Kingdom in central town, Harrow-Usville. He believed that with so many people filling the streets, Reddy would never be able to find him. He also noticed that there were more people than usual and assumed some kind of event was taking place. While walking, he accidentally bumped into someone. The other person immediately apologized and asked whether he was alright. Jiraiya replied that he should be the one apologizing because he had been careless and walked into her. As he looked at the person he had bumped into, he noticed her unusual white hair and reflected that his own black hair was unusual as well. She suddenly apologized again before running away. Jiraiya then noticed a pendant lying on the ground. Deciding that it could not be helped, he resolved to drop it off at the night office after finishing his shopping. As he continued walking, he heard a commotion as people nearby announced that Princess Rafine had been spotted close by. He remembered that it was the monthly day when the country's fourth princess was allowed to walk around the town. He entered a house and lay down on the bed, thinking that the princess had nothing to do with him. As he rested there, he thought about how nice it felt and concluded that it was the best. 1 month later, Jiraiya emptied his pocket and realized that he had no money left. With only $500 remaining, he knew it would be difficult even to pay for lodging that night. Seeing no other choice, he decided to accept a request. He found a poster advertising an escort request to the neighboring kingdom of Edel. It required a capable person who could protect the client from monsters and bandits during the journey. Adventurer rank did not matter. They were recruiting 10 to 15 people. A carriage would be provided, but meals were not included, so participants had to bring their own food. The reward was $250,000, with the possibility of additional rewards. The client remained private. Jiraiya calculated that traveling by carriage would allow them to reach Edel in 5 days. After completing the request, he planned to relax there. He accepted the request and headed to the carriage. Upon arriving, he saw 3 girls, one of whom was Reddy. She remarked that it had been a while and explained that, since he had never submitted an application at the guild, she had prepared one for him herself. She handed it to him and told him to sign it. Jiraiya looked surprised and questioned why she was there. At that moment, it seemed that his dream of spending his days leisurely would not be so easy to achieve. Reddy explained that they also happened to have business in Edel, so they had accepted the same request. Believing it to be fate, she urged Jiraiya to join her party and handed him an application form. Jiraiya dismissed the idea as anything but fate and refused to join. At that moment, someone called out to Reddy and asked if Jiraiya was the person she had been talking about. Reddy confirmed that he was and described him as absurdly strong. Jiraiya realized that the other 2 girls had apparently been working with Reddy even before they accepted the escort request. The first girl observed Jiraiya and questioned whether he was really strong, as he did not appear that way to her. Reddy admitted that his eyes looked cloudy, that he had no presence or aura, and that he was also quite lazy, but she insisted that he was strong. Jiraiya complained that she was making fun of him. The first girl then asked for his name. Reddy admitted that she did not even know it. Jiraiya introduced himself as Jiraiya Lero, a D-rank adventurer whose specialty and hobby was sleeping. Retinoa Innocent introduced herself as a hero who liked sweet snacks and hated every type of vegetable. The third girl introduced herself as Eve Dulcus, while the second girl was Lena Antetman, an A-rank mage and a current member of Reddy's party. Jiraiya noted that Lena was an A-rank and concluded that she must be strong. He asked if she was an Antetman. Lena smiled in response, but Jiraiya immediately turned his head away and dismissed the matter, leaving the 2 girls confused. He recalled that he had once beaten someone with the same surname, red hair, and elf ears. The Antetman family consisted of hot-blooded assassins, and he believed it would become a major nuisance if this situation proved troublesome as well. He resolved to stay as far away from Lena as possible. Reddy suggested deciding by majority vote whether her master should join their party. Jiraiya immediately told her to stop calling him master. Lena did not particularly mind, while Eve did not care either way. Declaring it to be 3 against 1, Reddy announced that the decision had already been made. Jiraiya objected, pointing out that Reddy should not make decisions on her own. He also argued that Eve saying she did not care either way practically meant that she did not want him to join. Reddy insisted that Eve definitely wanted him to join as well. She pulled Eve toward them, but Eve's expression remained unchanged despite Reddy's insistence. Jiraiya observed that she was completely expressionless. They then allowed Eve to decide for herself. Jiraiya believed there was no way she would want a random D-rank adventurer with cloudy eyes to join their party. Eve merely repeated that she was fine with either outcome before quietly stepping away from them. Reddy told him not to mind it because Eve was always like that. Jiraiya accepted the explanation but noticed that the client still did not seem to have arrived. A man suddenly pushed Jiraiya aside before greeting Reddy. He introduced himself as Kane Stolz, a B-rank adventurer. He considered meeting Reddy there to be fate and believed that someone of her status and someone like himself were naturally connected by destiny. Jiraiya assumed Kane was an acquaintance of Reddy's, but her expression clearly indicated that she had no idea who he was. Kane glanced at Jiraiya and questioned why a worthless D-rank adventurer was present. Annoyed, Jiraiya explained that he was simply there because he had accepted the request. Kane sighed and clarified that he was not referring to something so trivial. Introducing himself as the 3rd son of the Stolz family, he declared that he would explain matters in a way even someone of Jiraiya's low caliber could understand. He questioned why a mere D-rank adventurer was accompanying them when the request was more suitable for C-rank or B-rank adventurers. Jiraiya admitted that escorting a client to Edel might indeed be difficult for a D-rank adventurer, but the request had clearly stated that rank did not matter. Kane dismissed that argument, assuming Jiraiya was merely trying to curry favor with nobles or profit from the leftovers of stronger adventurers. He declared that this was exactly why he despised low-ranking adventurers like Jiraiya. Kane produced several coins, threw them onto the ground, and ordered Jiraiya to pick them up. Reddy stepped forward, but Jiraiya stopped her. Kane instructed him to collect the coins and withdraw from the request, insisting that a D-rank adventurer would be useless. He swore that low-ranked adventurers were nothing but trash. Jiraiya admitted that Kane was correct in believing he wanted money. As Reddy watched, Jiraiya acknowledged that he himself might be trash-like, but he insisted that many low-ranked adventurers possessed greater knowledge of medicinal plants or monster dismantling than anyone else. Others donated their earnings to orphanages, and there were many more people like them whom he knew personally. They were not trash. Both Reddy and Kane were surprised and impressed by his words. Kane brushed them aside, insisting that trash remained trash regardless of what it said. He again ordered Jiraiya to pick up the coins and leave. Jiraiya remarked that his wallet happened to be empty, but after thinking about it, he concluded that Kane needed the money more than he did. He picked up the scattered coins from the ground. Kane questioned what he meant, proudly declaring that as the 3rd son of the Stolz family, such loose change meant nothing to him. Jiraiya insisted that Kane would need the money because, as merely the 3rd son, he had no right to inherit the position of family head. Kane was visibly surprised. Jiraiya suggested that Kane use the money to buy tea cakes and curry favor with their client. He further remarked that Kane had only become a B-rank because of his family and mockingly regarded him as a high-ranking adventurer only in name. Enraged, Kane drew his sword and attacked Jiraiya. Before the strike could continue, a girl suddenly appeared and calmly instructed Kane to settle down, remain silent, and lower his sword. Hearing the mysterious voice, Jiraiya wondered who the girl was. Kane immediately dropped his sword and found himself unable to move. Jiraiya recognized the technique as word magic, a skill that could not be learned without talent. He also noticed that the girl had the same black hair as him, although she had altered her appearance with the ring of transformation. As he considered the situation, he concluded that this escort request was full of mysteries. The girl stated that she would give Kane a chance to explain himself and permitted him to speak. Kane immediately demanded that the restriction be lifted and asked whether she knew who he was, introducing himself as the 3rd son of the Stolz family. The girl sighed and revealed that she was the one who had submitted the escort request to Edel. In other words, she was the client. She introduced herself as Fina. She explained that she had been told the Stolz family would send a capable adventurer, but it appeared that she had been misinformed. Kane was taken aback. Fina continued by admitting that she honestly wanted to cancel the contract immediately. However, for the sake of the Stolz family's reputation, she would make an exception. She warned that if there was a next time, she would report his behavior to the appropriate person. Kane became visibly frightened. Fina declared that the matter was settled before turning her attention to Jiraiya. Surprised that he was being addressed next, Jiraiya listened as she explained that although Kane had been at fault for drawing his sword, Jiraiya had also been responsible because he had unnecessarily fanned the flames. She added that she had much more to say to him and informed him that he would ride in the same carriage as her. Jiraiya was surprised. Reddy then appeared, pleased that her master would be traveling together with the client. Jiraiya remarked that it was hardly a good thing since it probably meant he would receive even more lecturing. The others reacted in surprise before Reddy announced that they would now depart. Jiraiya and Fina rode together inside the carriage. Jiraiya apologized for the late introduction and introduced himself as Jiraiya Lero. He confirmed whether her name was Fina. She told him that he could drop the honorifics and simply call her Fina. Rather than lecturing him, she explained that she wanted to ask him a few questions. Fina asked whether, among his acquaintances or in his hometown, he knew anyone with black hair who wore a mask. Jiraiya was surprised but replied that he did not know anyone matching that description. In his hometown, he had been the only person with black hair. Fina appeared disappointed. Jiraiya assumed she had been interested in him because of his black hair. He mentioned that he had recently heard that the hero chosen in Edel also had black hair. Fina suddenly became excited. Believing that the person had finally appeared, she became convinced that this time it had to be the individual she had been searching for. Blushing, she admitted that she would finally be able to meet her fated person. She then realized that she had been standing directly in front of Jiraiya and shyly apologized. Jiraiya concluded that, since the request was headed to Edel, Fina intended to meet the black-haired hero. She confirmed that this was true, although she was still uncertain whether the hero would actually be the person she had been searching for. Jiraiya then asked why the client's identity had not been disclosed in the request. Fina explained that she could not reveal her social standing and admitted that the name Fina was not her real name. Jiraiya withdrew his concern, telling himself that she had nothing to apologize for. He then pointed toward the person riding a horse alongside the carriage and remarked that, with that person accompanying them, their safety was already guaranteed. Fina was surprised that he had noticed. The rider was highly skilled. She explained that, under normal circumstances, having only that person as her escort would have been more than sufficient, but she had still hired adventurers. She wanted to avoid having that escort fight at all costs because her swordsmanship would reveal her true identity. Jiraiya asked whether his assumption was correct. Fina confirmed that Jiraiya's assumption was correct, although she explained that it was only a precaution. It was not that she did not trust him. She had heard that he was a D-rank adventurer, but he did not fit that description at all. Jiraiya replied that he was simply good at observing people. More importantly, he asked what kind of person she was searching for. Fina became excited at the opportunity to explain. Believing it could not be helped, she moved closer to him and admitted that it was a precious memory she did not like sharing very often. However, because Jiraiya also had black hair, she decided to make an exception. Jiraiya remarked that she was standing too close. She began recounting the story of when she was 6 years old. 3 hours later, she was still talking, describing that person as the coolest she had ever known. He had saved her like the prince on a white horse from the storybooks she had read. The ring she wore had also been a gift from him, and he had even promised to marry her in the future. Throughout the entire story, Jiraiya continued nodding and giving brief acknowledgments. Fina eventually questioned whether he had truly been listening. Nervously, Jiraiya assured her that he had. Fina explained that she had such high expectations for the black-haired hero because that person had once declared that he would become a hero. Jiraiya quietly wondered about it. Fina's stomach suddenly growled, and she realized that talking for so long had made her hungry. She had been planning to set up camp later. Jiraiya remembered that he still had some snacks he had obtained earlier. Using spatial magic, he opened an item box, and a pouch instantly appeared in his hand. He offered it to Fina and asked whether she wanted to eat some. Fina was surprised that he could use spatial magic. Although learning the spell itself was easy, it required an enormous amount of money, so only specialized porters or high-class magicians normally acquired it. Jiraiya admitted that he had not known that and had only learned about it at that moment. As she stared at him, he assumed she was pitying him. Her attention then shifted to the pouch. She recognized it as a highly acclaimed charter snack that sold out immediately whenever it became available. Someone she knew regularly sent it to her as thanks for a favor. Jiraiya explained that he did not really have a sweet tooth, so he had no need for it. Fina could not hide her envy. Jiraiya decided to give the snacks to her. Fina thanked him and said she would treasure them. Jiraiya reminded her that she was hungry and should simply eat them. At that moment, Reddy suddenly appeared outside the carriage and looked inside. Jiraiya wondered when she had arrived. He offered some of the snacks to Reddy as well, and she happily accepted. Fina decided that it was time to take a break. Reddy happily commented that the candy was good. Jiraiya then offered some to Eve, who accepted with thanks. He also offered some to Lena, who reluctantly accepted his gift. Jiraiya noticed Kane and offered him some as well. Kane rejected him outright. Jiraiya assumed he was still sulking over their earlier confrontation. He placed the pouch on the ground, explaining that if Kane did not want it, he could simply throw it away. He left it there and remarked that, if Kane decided to try it, he should let him know what he thought. Kane stared silently at the pouch lying on the ground, wondering why Jirei was acting as though he had already forgiven him after belittling him. Night fell, and someone woke Jirei to inform him that it was time to change shift. The man introduced himself as Wed, a fellow adventurer who had also accepted the escort request. Jirei realized that he had forgotten he was assigned the graveyard shift for that night's watch. He remembered that, after listening to Fina's stories, she had treated him to a high-class dinner. Feeling completely satisfied, he had slept like a log. Before leaving, Wed reminded him not to let his guard down even though it was late. He remarked that, if he had to describe someone in one word, it would probably be an angel. Jirei was confused. Wed explained that he had only been able to control himself because he already had a wife and warned Jirei to be careful. As Jirei walked, he wondered what Wed had meant. He soon spotted Fina sitting nearby. She greeted him good evening. Surprised to find her there, he asked why she was out. She wondered whether she was not allowed to be there, causing him to panic before quickly denying it. Fina explained that, since she had the opportunity, she wanted to try standing guard at night. She rarely had the chance to go outside, making it a valuable experience for her. She asked whether he minded. Jirei sat down, realizing that she was the person Wed had been referring to. He hesitated because monsters could appear, but Fina assured him that it was fine. Despite her appearance, she was quite strong. She looked excited while Jirei remained silent. Jirei decided that he did not mind. Going along with a client's wishes was part of an adventurer's job, and there was little he could do given his position even if he wanted to object. He then asked whether her guard would approve. Fina looked slightly taken aback before claiming that her guard was understanding. Jirei concluded to himself that she had probably snuck away. Fina suggested that he leave the night's watch to her because he must have been tired and should get some rest. She explained that there were no strong monsters nearby, only creatures below C rank, so everything would be fine. Jirei replied that he would still be worried and decided to stay with her. He wondered how she knew there were so few monsters around and suspected that she could use detection magic as well. Just to be safe, he decided to check the surroundings himself. He noticed something moving in the grass and threw a stone toward it, only to discover a rabbit. It was a drooping rabbit, a D-rank monster, and he considered them fortunate to have encountered one since they usually hid so quickly that seeing one was rare. Fina blushed, finding it adorable. Jirei picked up the rabbit and asked whether she had ever seen one before. She admitted that it was her first time. He explained that rabbit meat and its other parts sold for a high price. He then remarked that he would take care of the rabbit and asked her to look away. Horrified, Fina reacted to the suggestion. Jirei immediately dropped the idea and instead asked whether she wanted to touch it. Fina instantly brightened and eagerly asked if that was really all right. She gently touched the rabbit and commented on how fluffy it was. While she was petting it, Jirei noticed the necklace she was wearing and asked about the pendant. Fina showed him the pendant and explained that it was her treasure. She had accidentally dropped it not long ago, but a kind person had returned it to her. Jirei realized that the pendant he had found earlier had belonged to Fina and concluded from the timing that she had also been the white-haired child he had encountered before. Fina revealed that there was a photograph of that special person inside the pendant. Jirei understood that she was referring to the same person she had spoken about earlier. She confirmed that she was and admitted that every time she looked at the pendant, all she could think about was that person. Jirei became nervous, fearing that she was about to begin another lengthy story about the person she treasured. Instead, Fina quietly admitted that she sometimes could not help but worry. Although she kept telling herself it was not true, she wondered whether that person was no longer alive after waiting for 9 years. Silence settled between them for a while. Jirei finally said that he was certain the person was still alive. Although he had no way of knowing for sure, something simply told him that it was true. Fina blushed before thanking him, finding him surprisingly kind. Jirei looked annoyed, finding that remark rather rude. In his own view, he should have been considered a kind and handsome man. He simply lacked motivation, spent most of his time sleeping, and, if possible, would happily live that way for the rest of his life. Fina remarked that such a lifestyle was no good. Jirei explained that doing only enough work to get by suited him perfectly. Half-hearted work for half-hearted pay was more than enough. Being free to do whatever he wanted without any stress was, to him, the ideal way to live. Fina quietly repeated the word free to herself and admitted that she also wished she could live that way without being constrained by her status. Jirei pointed out that she had made that decision herself and remarked that there would be nothing wrong even if she chose to elope with the person she had been waiting for. Fina admitted that it might actually happen if she ever met that person, believing herself reckless enough to do exactly that. Jirei smiled and told her not to worry about it. She had made a promise and had faithfully waited for 9 years. Being a little selfish seemed only natural. Fina looked happy and decided that she would think of it that way. As they remained seated together, Fina found it strangely comforting that she had ended up talking about so many different things with Jirei. He told her that if she wanted someone to confide in, she was free to do so. If she had any other worries, he would listen, so she should not hold back. Fina immediately became excited and wanted to talk even more about the person she had been waiting for. Jiraiya agreed, but only in moderation. The next day, several days had already passed since they accepted the escort request, yet nothing noteworthy had happened. The other adventurers dealt with every monster they encountered, leaving Jiraiya with nothing to do. The journey had been remarkably peaceful. Eventually, they emerged from the forest. Fortunately, a village appeared to be nearby, making it a suitable place to rest for the night. Fina stepped forward and noticed that the village gate was completely unattended. She wondered why there were no gate guards. Sensing that something was wrong, she suggested they investigate inside. Although many houses stood throughout the village, there was not a single villager in sight. Suddenly, an old man appeared and asked whether they were adventurers. Fina approached him, asked what had happened, and wondered where everyone else had gone. The old man revealed that all of the villagers had been kidnapped. They entered the house, and Fina wondered how something like a kidnapping could have happened. According to the old man, who had only been staying in the village for a short time, the attack had taken place a few days earlier. A large group of monsters had arrived together with men wearing black masks. They had looted the village's food, goods, and valuable metals before taking all of the villagers away. The old man explained that the attackers had bypassed the gate guards by threatening a merchant and hiding inside one of the merchant's cargo carts. They had been unable to request help from the neighboring country because the communication magic tool did not have enough range, making any message useless. Until the adventurers arrived, there had been nothing anyone could do. Wed speculated that the attackers might have been bandit beast tamers. Eve Dulcus identified them as kidnappers. Jiraiya turned his attention toward Eve. Fina explained that slavery had been abolished on the Hurt continent several years ago, but if kidnappers were involved, then it likely had not been abolished on the other continents. Jiraiya added that this was especially true in the regions of the Bestia continent occupied mainly by beastfolk. Many beastfolk there still harbored deep resentment over being colonized and oppressed during the previous war. Human slaves were certain to fetch high prices there. The old man explained that he had been spared because, with his legs in their condition, he could not perform any labor. The kidnappers had likely judged his value as a slave to be too low. Jiraiya then asked Fina what she intended to do. Confused, she asked what he meant. Jiraiya reminded her that they had only accepted an escort request. Anything beyond the scope of that request was for the client to decide. Fina was surprised. Jiraiya pointed out that the village had been attacked only a few days earlier, meaning there was still a chance they could catch up with the kidnappers. Fina immediately decided that they would rescue the villagers because she could not bring herself to abandon those who had been taken. The other adventurers were pleased with her decision. Wed wondered how they would locate the kidnappers. Fina decided to use clairvoyance. Her guard immediately stopped her, insisting that she must not use it. Fina pleaded with her, arguing that human lives were at stake. The guard quietly reminded her that revealing such magic would make disguising herself meaningless. Jiraiya then produced a magic tool through his magic and remarked that he possessed a search tool they could use instead. He questioned whether Fina still needed to use clairvoyance. Both Fina and her guard looked confused. Fina commented that magic tools like that were extremely rare and wondered how he had obtained one. Jiraiya activated the magic tool and explained that he had simply happened to acquire it some time ago. Using it, he quickly located the kidnappers. They were hiding inside a cave in the forest and had not yet traveled very far. Fina was astonished. Jiraiya handed her the magic tool so she could verify the information herself. After examining it, she confirmed that the information matched what she knew. The villagers also appeared to be unharmed. Wed inspected the magic tool as well. According to its information, the kidnappers controlled monsters above B rank, and there were more than 60 of them. Facing them directly would be difficult because of the overwhelming difference in numbers. The kidnappers could also use the villagers as hostages. He concluded that the safest approach would be to sneak in, rescue the villagers, and create a diversion to allow them to escape. Holding off that many enemies for long would be impossible, but buying a few minutes might be enough. Lena and Tetman suddenly argued that avoiding a fight solely to rescue the villagers would allow the kidnappers to escape and repeat their crimes. She believed they should eliminate them all there and then. Wed, Jiraiya, and Fina considered her proposal. Jiraiya wondered why everyone was struggling with the decision. He suggested that they simply launch a frontal assault while pointing toward Reddy. Since she was the hero, confronting the kidnappers directly would be extremely easy. Everyone realized that they had completely forgotten Reddy was a hero. Reddy looked confused before smiling. The group entered the cave. The kidnappers were caught off guard. Lena immediately attacked with magic, preventing them from escaping. Wed joined the battle as well. The kidnappers ordered their monsters to attack Reddy, but she defeated them with ease. Jiraiya watched the battle unfold. It was exactly what he expected from A-rank adventurers and a hero who surpassed even them. Rather than joining the fight, he sat on the cave ceiling using gravitation magic. The reason was simple. He had been assigned the duty of watching over the area. As a D-rank adventurer, he could not blame the others for believing he would only get in the way. Besides, he had no real desire to fight. He opened his magic and obtained one of the kidnapper's masks. The skull-patterned scarf attached to it caught his attention. It was identical to one from his past. The realization surprised him. It was unusual for him to remember something from so long ago. He stood up, deciding that, although it was troublesome, it would be safer to make sure. Using detection magic, he searched throughout the cave. He sensed Eve rescuing the villagers and felt relieved that everything appeared to be proceeding smoothly. He then shifted his detection magic toward Kane to observe how the attacking group was handling its side of the battle. Kane was engaged with the monsters, but one of the kidnappers quietly slipped behind him. Realizing that the kidnapper was about to stab Kane in the back with a knife, Jiraiya immediately shouted Kane's name. Suddenly, Jiraiya manipulated the kidnapper with threads extending from his hand. The kidnapper abruptly stopped and drove the knife into his own throat. He died instantly, leaving Kane bewildered about what had happened. A monster immediately leaped at Kane, but Kane killed it with his sword. Watching from above, Jiraiya acted surprised by Kane's movements. He had assumed Kane was merely a B-rank adventurer, yet his movements were worthy of a C-rank fighter while enhanced by body-strengthening magic. Such magic was indispensable for any swordsman, as it supported both physical ability and swordsmanship. Even so, Kane was still struggling. Jiraiya also noticed that Kane did not appear to be using presence detection, possibly because he relied too heavily on his high rank. Jiraiya was accustomed to unusual situations, having once trained in techniques for binding people. He concluded that what had just happened could probably be explained by something similar. Meanwhile, Reddy cut down the remaining monsters, defeating the last one sooner than she had expected. Wed reported that they had reunited with the rescue party. As everyone headed outside the cave, Jiraiya noticed that Reddy's group had already left and quietly descended to the ground. The area where the villagers had been held appeared to be a dead end. Releasing his technique, he opened up the hidden section of the cave. Deciding it was time to finish everything quickly, he proceeded onward. Elsewhere, one of the kidnappers fled while wondering why a hero had appeared there of all places, believing their entire plan had been ruined. He stopped at a magic circle, relieved to see that it remained intact. Thinking he could simply relocate and try again elsewhere, he picked up a magic tool. Before he could act, however, his body was suddenly paralyzed. Jiraiya appeared behind him using magic. He picked up the magic tool and identified it as a subordination bell. There were 10 of them. It was an unusually powerful magical tool capable of controlling large numbers of monsters, and hundreds of monsters soon gathered. The kidnapper wondered how Jiraiya had found him. Jiraiya revealed that he had simply followed him through the transfer magic circle he had left behind after concealing it with concealment magic. The kidnapper realized that such a crude concealment spell had been seen through so easily that he ought to return and practice more. Confused, he reflected that he had once been an A-rank magician adventurer and that very few people should have been capable of detecting it. Jiraiya explained that he had been wondering how the kidnappers intended to transport so many captured villagers to another continent. Smuggling such numbers across the border was impossible, leaving only one reasonable conclusion: a large-scale transfer magic circle. He examined the magic circle and confirmed that it led to the Bestia continent. He then analyzed it, interfered with its structure, and destroyed it. The kidnapper watched in disbelief before asking whether Jiraiya was a survivor of the Skull Brigade, showing him the skull-patterned scarf. The sight frightened him. Jiraiya confirmed that it was true. He had believed he had already wiped them all out and realized he had been careless. With that matter settled, Jiraiya decided it was time to return. The kidnapper attempted to move, believing the paralysis would wear off at any moment and hoping to prepare himself to escape. Jiraiya glanced back and remarked that he had forgotten to mention something. It would have been better if the kidnapper had not tried to move, but it was already too late. The poison Jiraiya had arranged to spread throughout the kidnapper's body upon movement had already taken effect. The pain surged through him, and he would die within a few minutes regardless. Terrified, the kidnapper desperately wanted Jiraiya to save him. He pleaded for mercy, promising to change his ways and surrender himself to the knights. Jiraiya smiled before grabbing the kidnapper by the hair. He admitted that it was unfortunate, but he had decided never to trust people like him again. He reminded the kidnapper of what happened to slaves taken to the Bestia continent. They were treated so cruelly that they came to regret being born. No matter how loudly they cried for help, no one answered them. Jiraiya concluded that it was unfortunate the kidnapper deserved no kindness at all. After bidding him farewell, he turned to leave. The kidnapper declared that Jiraiya also deserved no kindness. He rang the subordination bell, causing the surrounding monsters to turn toward him with low growls. Intending to drag Jiraiya down with him, he directed the monsters to attack. Before they could move, Jiraiya calmly ordered them to stop. Every monster obeyed immediately. He then remarked that they were in his way and instructed them to open a path. The monsters complied as Jiraiya calmly walked forward. The kidnapper could only stare in disbelief while Jiraiya smiled. Behind his lazy demeanor lay an unfathomable power hidden deep within. Afterward, Jiraiya covered his face in embarrassment. Wed noticed and asked whether he was feeling unwell. Jiraiya denied it. A few hours earlier, he had been chasing the surviving member of the human traffickers and had followed him through the transfer magic circle he had prepared. What embarrassed him was what happened afterward. It had been a long time since he had awakened that side of himself. He realized he had fallen into his old 8th grade syndrome, the embarrassing affliction that had followed him since puberty. Snapping out of it, he decided to forget the entire incident. The villagers prepared a banquet to celebrate their rescue and welcome the adventurers. Jiraiya decided they should simply enjoy it. While eating meat, he noticed Cain quietly walking away. Jiraiya followed him and asked where he was going instead of joining the meal. Cain told him to leave him alone. Jiraiya replied that it was only a meal and that he must be hungry. Cain looked downcast and admitted that he did not deserve that privilege. Jiraiya was surprised. Cain explained that he had accomplished nothing. The hero and the other adventurers had achieved results during the battle, while he had struggled against a single wolf. He believed he had only gotten in everyone's way. Silence followed for a moment before Jiraiya laughed and told him not to worry about it. He pointed out that he had also spent the battle merely watching over the area. Since Cain had actually participated in the fighting, that alone made him better. Cain became angry and shouted that Jiraiya should not compare them. As the third son of the Stolz family, he carried responsibilities unlike a low-ranking adventurer with none. The two situations were completely different. Jiraiya fell silent in surprise. Cain lowered his head in disappointment, painfully aware that he lacked talent. His brother had always called him a disgrace to the Stolz family and told him he should be grateful he had even been allowed to live. From birth, Cain had possessed no magic power and was incapable of using mana. Since magic was indispensable to swordsmen, he had been forced to rely solely on physical ability. Even so, he could never catch up to his brothers. His father had told him to rejoice because he would receive a gift despite having nothing. That gift was a high adventurer rank. Cain believed his father had done so only to preserve the family's reputation. He had been placed into a party of high-ranking adventurers and granted a decorative rank. Nevertheless, he had viewed it as an opportunity. If he could produce results, perhaps he would finally find a place where he belonged. Later, someone had approached him after hearing that he was recruiting as a B-rank adventurer and had greeted him as the party leader. Cain had assumed they were the ordinary low-ranking adventurers people often talked about. Although they were all D-rank or lower, he had not minded. He had considered them comrades, and that alone had made him happy. Going on adventures with them had been enjoyable. Some time later, as Cain was about to enter a room, he overheard voices inside. 3 people were laughing together. One of them mocked how Cain paid for all of their equipment simply because he believed they were comrades. Another laughed about how Cain never questioned them whenever they claimed a broken weapon was for their family. Whenever they put on apologetic expressions and asked for help, Cain would immediately agree because he believed comrades naturally helped one another. They laughed even harder, treating him as nothing more than a sponsor for their activities. Cain stood frozen before running outside into the rain. Unable to understand why, he remembered that he had truly considered them comrades. His feelings turned to anger as he concluded that they were nothing but trash. From then on, he believed that parasites who clung to high-ranking adventurers while remaining low-rank themselves were nothing but trash. The memory faded, leaving Cain sitting quietly with his head in his hands while Jiraiya remained silent beside him. Jiraiya eventually told him that, if he changed his mind, he should come back. If he waited too long, however, all the food would be gone. He then tossed Cain a pouch and asked him to taste its contents properly before letting him know what he thought. Cain caught the pouch and stared at it in silence, wondering why Jiraiya cared about someone like him. After all, Jiraiya was only a D-rank adventurer. Jiraiya returned to the banquet, thinking that Cain seemed to be living a difficult life. Living peacefully the way he did was perfectly fine by comparison. It was none of his concern, although he did become curious about what those sweets tasted like from a noble's perspective. After the incident was settled, everyone enjoyed the feast before resuming their peaceful escort journey. During the lunch break, each person spent the time however they wished. Jiraiya searched for a quiet place, intending to enjoy a peaceful nap. While he rested, Reddy appeared wearing swimwear. Soon afterward, Lena, Eve, and Reddy gathered nearby. Reddy caught a fish for lunch. When Jiraiya eventually woke up, he found the 3 girls frolicking in the water directly in front of him. Before he realized it, the expanse of bare skin before his eyes had greatly increased. Unsure of how to react, he quietly wondered what he was supposed to do. The 3 girls swam while Jiraiya remained lying down, realizing that he had ended up in a troublesome situation. He had only intended to take a nap there. To avoid being disturbed, he had cast camouflage magic on himself, allowing him to blend into the surroundings without being noticed. However, if he moved even a single muscle, they would immediately discover him and undoubtedly mistake him for a peeping Tom. As they relaxed in the water, Lena remarked that the client of the escort request was rather unusual. Despite being a noble, she was not arrogant at all, and because of her family circumstances, she had wanted to bathe alone. She also pointed out that both Reddy and Eve were nobles as well. Eve was more or less an adopted child, while Reddy considered herself to be in a similar situation. Lena clarified that she had been referring to Reddy's own family. Reddy then commented that, although Eve usually did not seem interested in making friends, she had been chatting with them. Eve looked startled. Lena remarked that spending time together made her happy. Eve brushed the matter aside before wondering whether they were truly safe from anyone seeing them. Hidden nearby, Jiraiya was startled. Lena assured her that everything was fine. She had already confirmed with detection magic that no one else was nearby and had also erected a magic barrier so that nobody could enter. Eve still pointed out that unlikely situations could happen, but Lena dismissed the possibility unless someone possessed extremely advanced disguise magic. Eve accepted the explanation. Jiraiya quietly sighed in relief, wondering whether his camouflage magic counted as high-level disguise magic. Sweating nervously, he considered the situation nothing but bad luck. Lena reminded Eve that they were wearing swimsuits, so there was no need to worry so much. She then wondered whether Eve had someone she liked. Eve blushed and denied it, adding that there was no reason to discuss such matters. Lena became suspicious. Eve explained that she considered herself an ordinary girl. She believed a girl should only show herself to someone she liked, and she had been told that people disliked those who failed to take care of themselves. Lena asked whether that meant there really was someone after all and smiled knowingly. Eve remained silent. Lena smiled warmly, saying she was happy for her and somewhat envious that Eve could think of herself as a normal girl. She then casually wondered what Eve would do if, however unlikely, someone had actually seen them. Eve declared that she would make sure such a person regretted being alive. Still concealed, Jiraiya was thoroughly alarmed. Lena suddenly thought she had heard a voice. Eve immediately suspected a peeping Tom. Jiraiya realized he had made a mistake. Eve headed toward the grass, and Jiraiya concluded that they had already determined his location. Since they would eventually find him, he decided he had no choice. Using metamorphosis magic, he transformed himself into a rabbit. Eve and Lena both fell silent as they approached the rabbit. Jiraiya, now in the form of a drooping rabbit, attempted to flee, but they quickly caught him. They remarked that drooping rabbits were rare before gently poking at him. Reddy then arrived and recognized it as the rabbit with delicious meat, deciding that lunch would include both meat and fish. Jiraiya panicked. His metamorphosis magic was poor, and he could only maintain the transformation for 3 minutes. Eve commented that the rabbit was adorable and reached toward him. Seizing the opportunity, Jiraiya escaped. Eve and Lena watched in silent surprise. Once he had put enough distance between them, Jiraiya returned to his human form. Relieved, he thought that had been dangerously close but hoped he had not been discovered. Somehow, he had managed to preserve his dignity. Just then, he noticed something unusual. Spirits had begun gathering nearby. To his surprise, he saw a girl standing there without clothes, thanking the spirits while expressing her interest in them as she reached toward them. She appeared to be conversing with the spirits themselves. To Jiraiya, it was like witnessing a scene from a fairy tale. She possessed beautiful white hair, ruby-like scarlet eyes and flawless skin, giving her the appearance of an angelic beauty. Jiraiya blushed, realizing that he had been staring at her like a shameless voyeur. He had unknowingly made his way beyond the magic barrier. Wondering whether someone like her had been traveling with their group all along, he found himself confused. 5 days had now passed since they had accepted the escort request. Wed called out to Jiraiya, inviting him to join a card game. Jiraiya refused, saying that he was tired of losing every time. He accused Wed of cheating, insisting there was no point in playing. Wed acted as though he had no idea what Jiraiya was talking about. Fina laughed at the exchange. Jiraiya reflected that everyone had become far too relaxed. They had practically forgotten they were still on an escort mission. Since they would soon reach Edel, it was about time for the scouts sent ahead to return. He believed that his journey with this group was nearly over. Suddenly, a soldier came running toward them in a panic. Fina urged him to calm down and asked what had happened. The soldier reported that monsters had invaded Edel and taken control of the city. They reached Edel and found it overrun with monsters. Zombies, skeletons, and wraiths filled the city. Jiraiya sensed the energy of undead monsters throughout the entire city. None of them seemed able to pass beyond the city's barrier. Reddy believed defeating all the monsters would be difficult and doubted the situation had occurred naturally. Eve concluded there was no other possibility. No one could summon such vast numbers of undead or continue recasting indefinitely. It was almost certain the city's residents had become the undead. Fina insisted everything would be fine and believed everyone was hiding safely somewhere. Looking frightened, she clutched her necklace. Lena wondered how Fina could say something so naive after seeing the city. There was no way anyone had survived. Fina fell silent. Kane suddenly urged everyone to leave immediately and run away. Wed replied that if Kane wanted to flee, he should do so. Kane was still young, and no one would think less of him. Kane was shocked and argued that fighting would only lead to a meaningless death. Wed admitted there might not be much meaning in fighting, but pointed out that the monsters were currently contained by the barrier. He questioned what would happen if the barrier fell and where the horde would go next. Kane became frightened and realized the monsters would undoubtedly head toward any nearby village, town, or country. To make any rescue possible, they needed to buy time. The Universia kingdom was close to Edel, and his family lived there. For him, running away was no longer an option. Wed turned to Jirei and asked him to escort the lady to Universia with Kane and request reinforcements. He apologized to Reddy and the others, explaining that he needed to remain behind and fight. Fina declared that she would stay as well. Wed was shocked. She explained that there was something she had to confirm no matter what. Kane stood stunned and shouted, unable to understand why they refused to run or whether they were not afraid, as though they no longer wished to live. Wed admitted that he was afraid, but losing someone dear to him was even more terrifying. Kane thought this could be his final chance to change himself. If he fought alongside them and they overcame the ordeal, he might gain true friends. Even someone like him might finally be considered necessary. He asked whether he could be of any help to them. Wed, Jirei and Fina were surprised. Wed acknowledged Kane's courage, and the others welcomed him. Jirei realized that if no one else was running, he would have to fight as well. Although he wanted to return home, he saw everyone looking at him. Looking frightened, he declared that he would fight too. Wed decided they should first devise a plan. Whoever had caused all this had to be nearby. Defeating that person was one thing, but they first needed to locate them. Wed suggested using Jirei's magic tool. Jirei explained that he had already been trying for some time without success. He could not find the culprit and was certain that only the highest rank of detection magic would make a difference. Fina's female guard announced that she had an idea. She addressed Rafine before correcting herself and calling her Fina. Fina removed her ring and introduced herself as Rafine Odium Refinado as light enveloped her. She explained that she would search for the culprit using clairvoyance. She suddenly transformed into a long-haired girl. Lena was shocked upon realizing she was the princess. Rafine admitted that she had not wanted to reveal her true identity, but the circumstances left her no choice. Jirei recalled how the surroundings had been lively because of her before he accepted the request. She possessed the fleeting beauty of a blooming flower. She was the only person in the kingdom intelligent enough to use clairvoyance, the highest level of detection magic. She was also closer to the people of the kingdom than most princesses, making her more like an idol, and she had many fan clubs. Jirei then realized she was the princess he had seen bathing before. He resolved to do everything possible to keep secret that he had peeped at her. The female guard, Cheyenne, warned Rafine that revealing her identity placed her in danger. Rafine told Cheyenne to remain quiet. Cheyenne was surprised. Rafine explained that she could not think that way under the current circumstances. She asked for permission to use her clairvoyance to locate the one responsible. Lena agreed. Rafine began praying to the great spirits dwelling there. As the fourth princess of the Universia kingdom, Rafine Odium Raffinado commanded them to grant her the eyes of God to see through the world, and she activated clairvoyance. The area glowed, leaving Jirei amazed. Normally, the abbreviated version of the chant would have been much longer. She possessed perfect control over such delicate, vast, and dense magic power. She was worthy of being compared to an S-rank magician. Jirei remembered trying to learn the spell once before, only to give up because it required too much reading. He was the type who learned by watching and doing. He thought it would have been helpful if someone around him had known the skill. Deciding to observe Rafine and imitate her later, he fixed his gaze on her. The structure of the magic felt as though it contained an enormous amount of mana. Jirei attempted to use clairvoyance himself. He closed his eyes and the area glowed. Even with his eyes shut, he noticed something shining behind him. Turning around, he saw a giant, terrifying skull monster. It appeared that nobody else had noticed it. Rafine's clairvoyance had failed to detect the monster because its level was far higher than hers. The monster spoke. Jirei decided that it was time to attack. The monster declared that humans were foolish. He introduced himself as the Death Eater Caries, one of the 4 heavenly kings serving the Demon Lord, and beckoned them to come and experience eternal sleep at his hands. Everyone turned toward the monster. Rafine was confused because her clairvoyance had detected nothing. The skull monster called them truly pitiful beings for believing they could detect him by such means. Since they had failed to find him, he explained that he had come out himself. The swordsman charged and swung his blade at the monster, but the monster responded with void blade decapitation. Declaring that it would not work, the monster dismissed the weapon as little more than a toy sword. He erected a barrier and stated that he detested people like the swordsman. A magic bullet pierced through the man's stomach. The monster told him to do himself a favor and stop opposing a higher being. The man collapsed. Eve immediately used recovery magic. Jiraiya realized the attack had been a magic bullet. He had barely managed to react in time and strike the mass of magic to weaken it, yet it still possessed tremendous power. The situation was becoming dangerous. Although the healing was progressing well and the man would not die immediately, it was only a matter of time. If he did not reach a hospital soon, his condition would become critical. The monster wondered whether they finally understood the position they were in. Reddy stepped forward and declared herself as his opponent. Wielding the holy sword Giroberto, she intended to reduce him to a sloppy mess. The monster asked whether she was the hero of this generation. Reddy confirmed it and pointed at Jiraiya, introducing him as her teacher and claiming that he was 10 billion times stronger than the monster. Jiraiya was stunned. The monster merely found it amusing. He decided they should stop playing since there were people among them who understood how to stall. For some time, Lena had been quietly kneading mana, believing the monster had not noticed. She was shocked when he revealed that he had been aware of it all along. He stated that he still needed to report to His Excellency the Demon Lord and had no time to play with him. He was certain the Demon Lord would be pleased and praise him. He had even taken care of the black-haired hero the Demon Lord had spoken about. He had secured everything they wanted, including the city. Rafine was shocked and refused to believe that the black-haired hero could be dead. The monster replied that he had no reason to lie to inferior humans and told them to look. He pointed toward a person sitting nearby. He remarked that the hero had always been weak. Despite being a hero, his divine protection had been feeble. The monster had regarded him as nothing more than an insignificant bug. Rafine refused to believe it, as he had been her hero and the one destined for her. Cheyenne urged Rafine to come back to her senses, insisting it was only the rambling of a demon. The monster remarked that enough time had already been wasted and that they should finish things quickly. He cast a spell, causing everyone's bodies to become heavy. He declared that none of them would be able to escape. Jiraiya honestly admitted that the skeleton's strength exceeded his expectations. He had never imagined that the A-rank adventurers and the hero Reddy would be rendered completely helpless against it. He truly had not wanted to stand out during an escort quest. He had remained a D-rank adventurer so he could live lazily. Although he really did not want to get involved, it was no longer the time to think that way. It could not be helped. Jiraiya suddenly stood up. The monster questioned how he was able to rise. Thinking he had forgotten to target Jiraiya, he cast excess gravity on him. The monster was shocked when the spell had no effect. He assumed Jiraiya possessed a magical tool that nullified the spell. Jiraiya replied that he had no such tool. The monster dismissed it as an act of bravado. He admitted that he had originally intended to turn all of them into undead, but had decided instead to make them suffer a horrible death. The monster released abyssal black flame at Jiraiya. Jiraiya remained standing and wondered what the attack was supposed to be. Wed shouted that it was dangerous and urged him to dodge. Everyone was shocked. Still standing within the black flames, Jiraiya told them to stop shouting because it was annoying. He remarked that everything would be fine since he had previously endured a dragon's breath. Wed was astonished that Jiraiya was still alive. Jiraiya confirmed that he was alive for the time being and then realized the flames had been bothering him for a while. He casually removed the black flames. The monster declared that it was impossible for his attack to have been erased so easily. He suspected it had been another magic attribute. He immediately released Calamity Water Dragon, but Jiraiya slapped the attack aside before kicking it away. He then blew away the remaining black flames. The monster was stunned. Accepting that it could not be helped, he decided to use the one spell he had wished to avoid. He unleashed an enormous spell and invoked the dark spirits dwelling in the abyss who governed the cycle of life and death. As the governor of death under the servitude of the Demon Lord, and under the name of Yuri Vastor Karfs, he commanded them to grant the living absolute death, condemn the dead to eternal suffering, and return the foolish weaklings to nothingness. A massive sphere of magical fire appeared in the sky. Wed looked terrified while Jiraiya remained silent. Wed declared that it would be over if the massive fireball struck them. Jiraiya assured him that everything was fine. Raising his hand, he activated skill interference, and the enormous fireball vanished. Wed was confused. The monster was equally shocked and could not believe what had happened. He could not understand whether Jiraiya was truly human. Jiraiya replied that no matter how the monster looked at him, he was a human, and a good-looking one at that. Setting that aside, he pointed out that the monster had run out of mana. The monster was stunned. As Jiraiya approached, the monster told him to wait, insisting there was no way he could lose to a human. He snapped his fingers and targeted Kane. Kane's body began moving on its own. The monster had cast manipulation magic with the last of his mana. Since Kane possessed very little mana, controlling him was easy. The monster considered himself fortunate that weak humans had been nearby. With Kane now serving as a hostage, he believed there was nothing Jiraiya could do. Jiraiya replied that Kane was not really his friend. Kane was stunned. The monster was confused, believing Kane was Jiraiya's friend. Wed told Jiraiya to stop joking at a time like this. Jiraiya thought that their relationship had existed only for the duration of the escort quest. At best, Kane was an acquaintance, and at worst, a stranger. He found it strange that the monster considered Kane his friend. The monster remarked that Jiraiya was a horrible person, almost like a demon. He then wondered if he should simply take more hostages instead. He believed the citizens of Edel were entirely at his mercy. Wed was confused, believing they had already died. Jiraiya immediately understood what the monster meant. It was the falsehood barrier, a barrier capable of turning falsehoods into truth within a designated area once its conditions were fulfilled. Those conditions were a red sky, collapsed buildings, countless bloodstains, and scattered lumps of fresh flesh. It had been configured as a reversal of life and death. Jiraiya commented that the monster had remarkably poor taste. The monster confirmed it and asked whether Jiraiya wanted to save the people of the city. Rafine wondered whether they could still be saved. Crying, she begged Jiraiya to save them. The monster remarked that everyone seemed to want the people rescued, and that everything now depended on Jiraiya. Rafine insisted that without that person, it would be meaningless. If that person could be brought back to life, she was willing to do anything. She continued pleading with him. The person she meant was the black-haired man who had just died. Jiraiya thought that if the man had truly been a hero, the divine protection of the holy mark should have kept him alive within the barrier. He reflected on Rafine's willingness to do anything. She remained silent. He told her that she did not need to beg and instead should simply watch. Jiraiya pointed toward Edel and cast Purify Undead. The humans returned to their normal state. They remembered feeling as though they had been undead. Some wondered what they had been doing moments earlier, while others recalled only a strange nightmare. The black-haired man believed he had merely been sleeping. The monster stood bewildered. Jiraiya smiled. To undo the falsehood barrier, all he had needed to do was alter its conditions. In the end, everyone had been restored to life. The monster was puzzled. He decided to retreat for the day instead. He warned that if Jiraiya attempted to kill him, he would take Kane down with him. Kane told Jiraiya not to worry about him. Rather than become a burden, he wanted Jiraiya to kill both him and the monster. The monster was surprised. Kane admitted that no one had ever needed him during his life, so he did not mind dying. Jiraiya replied that he had no intention of getting Kane killed. Kane was surprised. Jiraiya acknowledged that Kane was indeed a selfish bastard who thought only of himself, but said that he still needed him and would not let him die. Jiraiya released his magic. The monster suddenly disappeared. Reddy and Wed were finally able to move again. Jiraiya remarked that it was finally over. Wed embraced Jiraiya and cried, realizing just how strong he truly was. He admitted that he had genuinely believed they were going to die. Rafine was left speechless. Even weakened, the monster's protective barrier had been destroyed with ease, and he had been defeated in a single attack. Reddy remarked that it was just as expected and praised Jiraiya's incredible strength. Jiraiya thought that returning without fighting would have been better after all. Even so, he supposed that doing things like this from time to time was not so bad. Suddenly, Jiraiya sensed a powerful bloodlust. It was not directed at him, making him wonder who the real target was. His gaze shifted to Rafine. He immediately shoved her aside, and they both fell to the ground. The attack resembled the techniques associated with Lena's assassin family, leading him to suspect it might have been one of them. He concluded that the attack had been aimed at Rafine. He asked whether she was alright, and she confirmed that she was. Jiraiya noticed that his clothes had been burned. He threw away the ruined garment and asked Rafine whether she had any spare clothes. As he removed his shirt, Rafine blushed. A scar was visible across Jiraiya's chest, leaving her wondering who he truly was. If there was ever a moment that felt like fate, Rafine believed it was her meeting with a certain boy. The story took place 9 years earlier. Rafine Odium Refinedo, then 6 years old, ran through the palace after shoving aside a maid as part of her play. At that time, she behaved very childishly and constantly caused trouble throughout the royal palace. Her father, King Pilar Odium Refinedo, adored her. No matter what kind of prank she pulled, he never punished her. There was, however, a reason she constantly played pranks on others. Whenever she asked her older sisters to play with her, they refused because they claimed she had dirty blood. They did not want to play with an illegitimate child, believing they would become dirty as well. Rafine did not understand what being illegitimate meant or why they refused to play with her. Her father was always busy, leaving her alone. While crying, she spoke to her stuffed bear and wondered if everyone would notice her if she did something bad. She was lonely and only wanted someone to look for her, so she continued playing pranks on those around her. She often slipped out of the royal castle and into a nearby forest, where she built her own secret base. One day, after ordering a maid to step aside, she ran out of the palace and secretly headed into the forest. There she spotted a boy doing push-ups. She became frightened. Although he wore a strange mask, she thought his black hair was beautiful. The boy stood up after sensing that someone was hiding nearby. He gave a warning for the person to reveal themselves, otherwise he would come over himself. Walking behind the tree, he found Rafine. Realizing she was only a child, he quickly told her to return home because the forest was no place for someone her age. Rafine insisted that it was her place and demanded that he leave. The boy pointed out that it was not her property, so he should not be the one leaving. Rafine declared that it was her secret base and ordered him to go somewhere else. The boy became confused, wondering whether he had done something to upset her. Rafine thought her word magic had failed. The boy questioned whether he had been rude and apologized. She burst into tears. Until then, her word magic had always worked on everyone else. The boy was startled by her crying and decided to tell her an amazing story instead. She immediately stopped crying. After saying that, he began telling various stories. Every one of them was far more interesting than the stories she heard at the royal palace, and she quickly became absorbed in them. When he finished, he checked whether she had stopped crying. Rafine insisted that she was still crying. Looking conflicted, the boy listened as she asked for another story. He agreed but decided it would be the last one for the day. Since it was getting dark, they should both return home, and he would see her again the next day. Smiling brightly, Rafine looked forward to seeing him tomorrow. From that day onward, she visited their secret place every day to hear his stories. Of all the tales he told, her favorite was the simple story of a hero defeating the demon lord, saving the world, and marrying the princess. Blushing, she thought it was a wonderful story and wondered whether she could become like the princess in it. The boy concluded that she could not. Rafine wondered why. He thought that, unlike some foolish brat, the princess in the story knew how to speak politely. Rafine insisted that she could do that as well. The boy laughed. She wished those peaceful days could continue forever. Just as she began thinking that, a man appeared after confirming that she had indeed come. On her way to the secret base as usual, Rafine was caught by a group of criminals. The man remarked that the information had described a richly dressed brat. The masked leader concluded that she must belong to an extremely wealthy noble family and decided to extort money from her. He frightened Rafine and ordered her to come with him. Rafine tried to stop them. One of the men suddenly became unable to move, giving her what she believed was a chance to escape. However, she immediately fell to the ground. She could not control multiple people at once and was injured. The masked leader admitted that he had originally intended to release her after collecting a ransom, but had changed his mind. Instead, they would sell her. He declared that she would never see her parents again before ordering his men to gag her and stuff her into a bag. Helpless, Rafine silently prayed for someone to save her. At that moment the boy appeared. He confronted the kidnappers and stood before the masked leader with his sword drawn. The masked man wondered who he was. The boy had appeared in an instant and effortlessly defeated all of his underlings. The masked leader attacked, knocking the boy's sword from his hand. Believing the boy was trying to play the hero by risking his life for a girl, he pressed the attack. The boy admitted that he could not understand why the man chose such a path. Since he possessed strength, there were many other ways to live. The masked leader mistook those words as a plea for mercy. The boy explained that the man had the power to live an honest life and therefore should not prey upon the weak. The masked leader admitted that he acted that way simply because it was the most enjoyable way to live. Ordinary living bored him, and doing whatever he pleased was the best. He added that the world was nothing more than survival of the fittest. The masked leader swung his sword again, but the boy caught the blade with his bare hand. The masked man was left stunned. Having understood exactly what kind of person stood before him, the boy crushed the sword. The masked leader watched in shock as the boy seized him by the neck. The boy instructed him to surrender himself to the chivalric order and repent. If he did so, the boy would save him. The masked leader immediately agreed and swore that he would repent. The boy released his grip. The man promised that he would never repeat his crimes and would live an honest life from then on. He repeatedly apologized, admitting that he had been the sort of person who would kill, steal, and resort to underhanded methods whenever it benefited him. Meanwhile, his remaining underlings continued beating Rafine. One of the masked man's underlings complained that it was embarrassing to struggle against a mere boy. His nose had already been broken. The masked man warned the boy not to move. If he did, Rafine's head, trapped inside the bag, would be crushed. If the boy did not mind her head being crushed, then he was free to act. The masked man admitted that, no matter how strong the boy was, he was still young. The boy had deliberately avoided striking vital points to keep them alive, and his underlings were not so weak that they could not recover. The masked man concluded that the boy was naive because he fought without the resolve to kill, and he found that laughable. The boy realized that the masked man had lied about repenting for his crimes. The masked man openly admitted it. He had never intended to honor such a verbal promise. He ordered the boy to release his body reinforcement immediately, or Rafine would be killed. The boy agreed. The masked man immediately punched him and shouted for him to die. His underlings surrounded the boy and stomped on him. Grabbing the boy by the hair, the masked man admitted that his strength at such a young age was nothing short of miraculous. It seemed wasteful to kill someone with such talent. Still holding his hair, the masked man invited him to join the Skull Brigade. He offered to make the boy his right-hand man, placing him second among 300 members, calling it an exceptional offer. The boy attempted to refuse, but the masked man kicked him before he could finish. The masked man reminded him that his life or death rested entirely in his hands. As he continued speaking, the boy suddenly began to glow. Confused, the masked man ordered him not to move. The boy calmly replied that it was no longer an issue. The masked man was bewildered when his own underlings suddenly stabbed themselves. He demanded to know what the boy had done to them. The boy admitted that it was true he had lacked resolve. Until then, he had believed that defeating monsters alone was enough to become a hero, though he had always suspected it was insufficient. He thanked the masked man because he had finally found the resolve he needed. He admitted that he was not particularly clever and could only understand things once they reached this point. To achieve his goal, he declared that he would kill every one of them. Above all else, he despised people like the masked man. The masked man was shocked and charged at the boy with a knife. Suddenly, invisible strings bound his body and prevented him from moving. The boy admitted that he did not like using the magic marionette. He had not trained with it enough, so it only worked on people with low magic resistance. There was also the possibility that those affected would never regain their true selves. The boy picked up his sword and slowly walked toward the immobilized man. Having found his resolve, he no longer intended to show any mercy. The boy slashed through the masked man's body. Afterward, he used healing magic on Rafine. She thanked him for healing her. Curious, she tried to look at the dead bodies, but he embraced her and stopped her, believing it was better that she did not see them. He explained that they had belonged to a notorious bandit group in the area and that she had no reason to worry because they had received what they deserved. Rafine wondered whether he had truly saved her. The boy regarded saving people as something natural for a hero. Rafine blushed. Noticing that her body temperature seemed unusually high, he remarked that she felt feverish and decided to carry her closer to her home. While riding on his back, Rafine asked whether he was a hero. He admitted that he was not one yet. However, he promised that he would definitely become one because he had a dream. Rafine promised to support him and believed he would succeed. At that moment she realized that what she felt for the boy was love. From then on, she visited him often. Several months later, however, she found him lying on the grass with claw marks across his chest. Alarmed, she wondered what had happened. After discovering him collapsed near their hideout, she immediately ran back to the royal castle to call for help. Some kind of magic interfered with every healing spell, continuously erasing its effect. Rafine prayed desperately to God for help. Whether her prayers truly reached God or not, the boy survived as though by a miracle. Later, as they sat together, Rafine checked whether he was alright. He had recovered. She invited him to return and play with her again, but he declined, explaining that he would no longer come to their hideout starting the following day. Confused, Rafine wondered why. He explained that an important battle awaited him. She wanted to accompany him, but he decided that she would only get in the way and refused to bring her along. Instead, he gave her a gift. The gift was a magical tool called the Ring of Transformation. He promised that he would emerge victorious from his coming battle and asked her to patiently wait for him while keeping the ring. Rafine blushed, believing it was a marriage proposal just like those in the hero stories he had told her. She became convinced that he was leaving to fight the demon lord. She resolved to wait for him forever. The boy gently patted her head. True to his word, he never returned to their hideout. Remembering the story in which the hero defeated the demon lord, saved the world, and married the princess, Rafine came to believe that he had intended to reenact that tale with the two of them. Determined to become the ideal princess, she devoted herself to improving her etiquette. She also trained the fundamentals of the word magic with which she had been born. Since she had no idea where the boy had gone, she dedicated most of her time to mastering detection magic, pushing herself so far that she eventually acquired clairvoyance. She continued waiting, and before she realized it, 9 years had passed. No matter how many times she searched for him using clairvoyance, she found nothing. Her anxiety grew worse with each passing day until news finally reached her that a black-haired hero had appeared in the neighboring country of Edel. Now, she smiled as she realized that the information had simply been wrong. Jirai noticed her expression and wondered what was wrong. Rafine failed to notice the many inconsistencies before her. She had convinced herself that his younger appearance did not matter because he was the same boy. Jirai noticed that she had been staring at him for too long and became embarrassed. He assumed she had finally realized how handsome he was. Rafine smiled in agreement, acknowledging his good looks. Jirai was caught off guard. Rafine embraced him, believing that she had finally found the person destined for her. Jirai reflected that a full day had passed since the extermination of the skeleton that had claimed to be one of the 4 heavenly kings of the demon lord's army. The party member who had joined the quest despite being on the verge of death had survived and was recovering at a medical facility. As for the undead infestation that had struck Edel, Jirei had purified the city's land and altered everyone's memories so that no one would remember the incident. Meanwhile, the black-haired hero of Edel had been imprisoned for falsifying a hero's mark. Peace had returned, but one serious problem remained. Jirei now found himself dealing with an utterly troublesome situation. Rafine had already begun planning their wedding. She wanted the ceremony to be held in the largest hall in the kingdom. She looked forward to spending the rest of their lives together and even wondered how many children they should have, deciding they should have many in order to produce an heir. After the other party members began bombarding him with questions, Jirei slipped away. He was certain he had gone to sleep alone at the inn the previous night, so he was stunned to wake up and find Rafine lying in his bed. Jirei questioned why she kept following him when she had originally been searching for a black-haired hero. Rafine found the question strange because, in her mind, they were destined to marry. Jirei was speechless. Rafine pointed out the scar on his chest. The person she had been searching for all these years had the very same scar. When she had been a child, he had bravely saved her. She could not understand how he could have forgotten. Jirei genuinely had no memory of it. Rafine recounted, in great detail, the story of the black-haired boy she had played with 9 years earlier. It was only natural that he did not remember. At the time, he had been training heat sense together with presence sense while wearing a mask that completely blocked his vision. Believing that saving people would cause the holy mark to appear and allow him to become a hero, he had rescued countless individuals. Remembering every single one of them was impossible. When Rafine mentioned that he had given her the ring before leaving to fight the Demon Lord, Jirei remembered that he had actually been heading to a magical tool auction. He had failed to obtain the magical tool he wanted. He had never promised to marry Rafine. He had only saved her because he believed it would help him become a hero. Everything had been a misunderstanding on her part. Rafine looked at him, making him feel embarrassed under her gaze. Jirei told her to stop following him and stop calling him affectionately. Rafine decided instead that she would call him her dear. Jirei immediately rejected the idea. He wondered what would happen if he explained that he had never promised to marry her and that he had not saved her out of noble intentions. Rafine answered without hesitation that she would die. She could not imagine a world without him. Jirei was left dumbfounded. Rafine insisted that he should never be swayed by any other woman and should look only at her. Jirei found her frightening. He did not want her to die because of him, but marrying her would mean inheriting the exhausting responsibilities of becoming king. He had wanted nothing more than to live lazily all his life. Jirei asked Rafine to do him one favor. She readily agreed. He requested that she return the ring of transformation. Rafine questioned why, believing it to be the engagement ring that symbolized their promise and a precious keepsake. Jirei had never intended it to be interpreted that way. Although he disliked resorting to unusual methods, he felt he had no other choice. Without warning, Jirei pinned Rafine onto the bed. He declared that they would always be together from now on, making the ring unnecessary. Rafine blushed and happily agreed. Having successfully obtained her consent, Jirei slipped the ring from her finger. He then excused himself by saying that he needed to use the toilet for a moment. Rafine agreed but immediately wanted to accompany him. Jirei refused. Rafine insisted that, from now on, they should share everything with one another. Jirei suggested they take things slowly instead. Rafine accepted that, believing they would always remain together. Jirei walked to the door, saying that he would be right back. After stepping outside, he quietly shut the door behind him. He immediately decided that it was time to run away. His plan was to use the ring of transformation to change his hair color, but he still had to decide where to flee. He considered going to Char's place. It would be unfortunate if he failed to tell her what he thought of her snack, though he then realized he had never even asked what everyone else thought about it. Afterward, Kane was called over. He admitted that he had been thinking about something. The receptionist asked whether he was truly satisfied with his decision. Kane answered that he was and believed it was for the best. She was astonished that he would willingly demote himself from B rank to D rank, something unprecedented. Kane explained that he no longer wanted to cling to the meaningless title of a decorative B rank adventurer. The receptionist pointed out that, based on his swordsmanship alone, reaching C rank was entirely possible, making a demotion to D rank unnecessary. In fact, Kane had retaken the guild's entry examination the other day. During the test, he fought a mock battle against an active knight who was also a C-rank adventurer. To his surprise, he had won. Until then, he had never measured himself against anyone other than his brothers, who served in the Imperial Guard. Since they only accepted requests above C-rank and constantly fought powerful monsters, he had never understood the true extent of his own abilities. He regarded the result as a pleasant surprise. Even so, because he wanted to rebuild himself from the ground up, he decided to begin again as a D-rank adventurer. Sharing the same rank as Jirei made him happy. Although he could not yet stand beside him as an equal, he believed that once he became stronger, he would finally be useful to Jiraiya. Looking back, he was convinced that Jiraiya's earlier words had meant exactly that. Another adventurer called out to Cain, urging him to hurry because the carriage was about to depart. After the escort quest to Edel had concluded, Cain had visited the guild to apologize to everyone for the trouble he had caused. He had also approached a party that had once rejected him. After lowering his head and sincerely asking again, they accepted him. He had worried they would refuse once more, but they welcomed him warmly. Cain informed the receptionist that he was leaving and entrusted the remaining matter to her. She stopped him, pointing out that he had omitted his family name from the registration form. Since he belonged to the Stolz family, she believed it had to be included. Smiling, Cain replied that there was nothing wrong with the form. The receptionist was confused. She called after him, insisting there was still paperwork to complete, and addressed him as Cain Stolz. Cain corrected her. From now on, he was simply Cain. Thinking about the first adventure of his new life and the destination that awaited him, he departed. Meanwhile, in the Demon Lord's castle on the Rathasvet continent, a girl wondered why someone was taking so long to return. At that moment, the door opened, revealing the skull monster. Calling out to the Demon Lord, the monster urged her to listen. The girl was Luna Dulk Eucharis, the Demon Lord chosen by the Lust Demon Mark. She questioned why the skull monster was crying and told her not to appear in that skeletal form. With a snap of her fingers, the skull monster transformed into a girl. She explained that most of her body had been destroyed, and reconstructing herself had taken a great deal of time. She introduced herself as Yuri Vastal Karfs, one of the 4 heavenly kings serving the Demon Lord. Luna reminded Yuri that her task had simply been to investigate the black-haired hero and buy some sweets while she was there. Yuri explained that, since she had the opportunity, she had decided to present the Demon Lord with the entire city by turning Edel into a city of the undead. Luna was horrified and declared it the worst possible outcome. Yuri misunderstood her reaction, believing Luna was merely surprised by her competence. In reality, the story about the hero had only been an excuse. Luna had only wanted candy. At that moment, she felt like giving up on being the Demon Lord altogether. Luna asked what had happened to the city. Yuri explained that an absurdly powerful human had restored everyone to life before showing her an image of Jiraiya. Luna froze in shock. He looked exactly like the terrifying man she had encountered before becoming the Demon Lord. She remembered how he had chased her relentlessly for 3 days and 3 nights, leaving her convinced she was going to die. The memory remained deeply traumatic. If she ever met him again, she was certain she would not survive. She had never wanted to become the Demon Lord in the first place, nor did she wish to fight heroes, demons, or humans. All she wanted was a peaceful life, so she had no regrets. Reaching a sudden decision, Luna declared that from then on she would devote herself to touring the world in search of snack. Elsewhere, Lena announced that she had finally found Jiraiya. His ability to make instantaneous decisions, combined with his overwhelming strength, convinced her that no matter how many times she tried to kill him, he would never break. She believed he would accept all of her murderous impulses. Laughing to herself, she found the thrill of a battle fought on the brink of life and death exhilarating. Although she had originally accepted the escort quest to assassinate Rafine, that mission could wait. What she wanted most was to kill Jiraiya as soon as possible. Even so, she knew she was no match for him in her current state. Reluctantly, she concluded that she would have to seek guidance. Her thoughts turned toward the person she intended to visit. At that moment, Jiraiya arrived at a castle in the nation of sorcery known as Magicasmea. As the story continued, Jiraiya Lero began his day by going back to sleep. Despite everything that had happened recently, being able to forget it all for a while was comforting. After being invited to join the hero's party and even receiving a marriage proposal from a princess, he decided that being lazy was still the best way to live. Suddenly, Reddy appeared, pulled away his blanket, and woke him up. Just when he had been enjoying his sleep, Jiraiya was left feeling cold. Too many things had happened lately, preventing him from getting any proper rest. While he had been living lazily in a cabin outside town, Reddy, the hero bearing the holy mark, had unexpectedly invited him to join her party. Later, during the escort quest to Edel, he had been forced to fight a skeleton that claimed to be one of the Demon Lord's 4 heavenly kings. To make matters worse, the 4th princess of the Universia kingdom had somehow decided that he was her destined partner and proposed to him. To escape from Rafine, he had used the ring of transformation to change his hair color to red. He then sought refuge with Char, someone he had known and helped in the past. Although the journey normally required 12 days by carriage, he had reached her place in only 2 by trying his absolute hardest. Even now, he was still exhausted. Jiraiya asked Reddy to wake him again in 3 hours. She refused because he had said the same thing the previous day and never gotten up. She continued shaking him, determined to wake him. Jiraiya thought she was naive if she believed such gentle shaking would work. He figured she had forgotten that he possessed the divine blessing of sleep. Instead of waking him, the shaking felt more like a cradle, making him even sleepier. Reddy concluded that he was not waking up at all and jokingly thought that his blessing must have evolved. Jiraiya agreed and claimed that it had become the divine blessing of eternal sleeping. Reddy told him to stop fooling around and get up. Jiraiya finally agreed, admitting that the story about the divine blessing of sleep had only been a joke. Looking at the elf girl before him, Jiraiya reflected that the person pretending to be Reddy was actually Char Antetman. Although she looked like a young girl, she was over 500 years old. Despite her delicate appearance, she had once been known as the strongest assassin. They had first met while Jiraiya was still training to become a hero. Because he had overhunted and disrupted an ecosystem, he had become the target of an assassination. Char's attempt had failed, and just as Jiraiya was about to finish her off, she broke down crying, admitting that she did not want to be an assassin anymore. Jiraiya had given her some candy to calm her down. Having never tasted sweets before, she became fond of them and eventually grew deeply attached to him. Char was now the proud owner of a successful pastry shop called Chartet. As Jiraiya looked at her more closely, he noticed something and moved closer to her face. Char happily assumed he was approaching her, though she thought it was already late in the day and hoped he would be gentle. Instead, Jiraiya pointed out that she had bad hair. Char immediately became embarrassed before growing angry, complaining that he was always doing things that could easily be misunderstood and that it caused trouble for girls. Jiraiya apologized. Char then mentioned that a black-haired person as beautiful as an angel had visited her shop. The visitor had asked whether she had seen someone with black hair, but Char had replied that she had not. Jiraiya wondered whether it had really been an angel. At first, he suspected it might have been Rafine, but she had white hair and had no idea where he was hiding, so it had to have been someone else. Char happily reported that her newest product had become a huge success and credited Jiraiya for helping her come up with the idea. She thanked him for sharing his opinion. Jiraiya insisted that he had done nothing and that the ideas were entirely hers. He had merely repeated something he had once read in a book. Smiling, Char told him that it would be perfectly fine if he stayed in her house all the time. He did not need to work because she would take care of everything. Feeling embarrassed, Jiraiya admitted that he would feel guilty if he accepted that, so he intended to work and repay what he owed her. Char agreed before showing him a ticket for the 57th Sorcery Tournament of Magicasmea, knowing how much he liked magical tools. Char explained that the tournament's grand prize was a magical tool, so she believed Jiraiya would be interested in it. Jiraiya wondered whether she was serious. He certainly wanted the prize, but he knew the tournament was not open to the public. Participants either had to belong to an organization or institution with a letter of recommendation, or possess at least A-rank adventurer status or equivalent magical power. Since he clearly met none of those requirements, he believed he could not participate. Char pointed out that the ticket clearly bore his name. Jiraiya took it and examined it closely. It really did have his name on it, and it had been issued by the Royal Magic Academy. He was stunned. He could not remember ever becoming a lecturer or even a janitor there. At that moment, a cat suddenly appeared. The cat greeted him as though it had been a long time. Startled, Jiraiya wondered why it was there. The cat was Aldi Otis, a fairy who currently served as the acting principal of the Royal Magic Academy. Aldi explained that he had been invited to the house as a guest. Jiraiya looked toward Char for confirmation, and she admitted that she had asked Aldi to write Jiraiya a letter of recommendation. Jiraiya immediately grabbed Aldi and told Char to wait while they talked privately. After entering another room, Jiraiya angrily demanded an explanation. He questioned why Aldi had written him a recommendation and arranged for him to participate in the tournament. Aldi simply replied that Char had asked him to do it. Jiraiya reminded him that although he was willing to help Char, Aldi knew perfectly well that he disliked participating in tournaments. Aldi remarked that those feelings belonged to the past and believed Jiraiya had changed. Looking annoyed, Jiraiya told Aldi to say that while looking him in the eyes. He demanded that the recommendation be cancelled, insisting that he was not affiliated with the Royal Magic Academy and therefore could not enter. He also warned Aldi not to forge official document. Aldi calmly replied that Jiraiya was now affiliated with the Academy, making everything perfectly legitimate. He added that the tournament was about to begin. Jiraiya was left speechless. Aldi then admitted his true motive. If Jiraiya remained at the Academy for the rest of his life, Aldi would be free to research his magical power as much as he pleased. Jiraiya flatly refused. He declared that he would tell Char he was not entering the tournament and reached for the door, but Aldi stopped him. Jiraiya recalled meeting Aldi 4 years earlier, shortly after arriving in Magicasmea. During a hunt for powerful monsters, he had rescued Aldi from an S-rank magical beast in a nearby forest. Amazed by Jiraiya's magic, Aldi had immediately asked him to become a lecturer at the academy. Ever since then, Aldi had pursued him relentlessly. Eventually, the constant recruiting became unbearable. Since Jiraiya had no desire to become a lecturer, they had compromised by having him work as a research assistant for a limited time. At first, the work consisted only of simple measurements of his magical power. Before long, however, Aldi began requesting samples of his hair and nails. That frightened Jiraiya enough that he simply left. From then on, Aldi earned a permanent place on Jiraiya's blacklist. Aldi happily remarked that they had finally met again. He admitted that the situation afterward had been terrible. They had searched the entire town for a red-haired man because they believed Jiraiya had died. Jiraiya was confused before remembering that he had been wearing a red wig at the time. That meant Aldi still did not know his real hair color was black. Jiraiya resolved never to reveal that fact. He firmly repeated that he would not become a lecturer because he disliked troublesome work. Aldi replied that he did not mind if that was Jiraiya's decision, but that only reflected Jiraiya's own wishes. Jiraiya questioned what he meant. The two of them then returned to the others. Char asked whether they had finished talking. Jiraiya told her that he was thinking about canceling his tournament entry. Char was shocked and burst into tears. Jiraiya was caught off guard. Through her tears, she apologized for being selfish and admitted that she had not considered his feelings. She believed she had only caused him trouble. Jiraiya explained that she had not troubled him at all and that he simply did not want to participate. Char replied that she did not want him to force himself into doing something he disliked. Unsure how to respond, Jiraiya fell silent. Unable to bear the situation any longer, Jiraiya suddenly claimed that he had only been joking. He insisted it had all been a prank and announced that he would participate in the tournament after all. Char smiled and stopped crying, relieved that she had not truly caused him trouble. Aldi looked delighted, while Jiraiya stood there dumbfounded. Aldi immediately congratulated him on becoming a lecturer and declared that the academy would welcome him with open arms. Jiraiya shouted in frustration, realizing that he was now going to have to work. With that, both his position as a lecturer and his participation in the tournament were firmly decided. The next day, at the Magic Academy, Jiraiya lay on the grass, thinking that the refreshing breeze and the warmth of the sun were the best life had to offer, and he was glad to be alive. The reason he was lazing around on the academy grounds was that he could not participate in the tournament unless he was affiliated with the academy. They had tried to make him a lecturer, but teaching without preparation was impossible, so he was happy working as a janitor instead. Magical tools were scattered all over the vast academy grounds, activating cleaning and repair magic. His job was to supply those tools with mana. Although the tools normally required a large amount of mana that would be replenished over time, that did not apply to him. He had already finished the task, leaving him with nothing else to do. With official permission to slack off, he was glad he did not have to give lectures. Being paid to sleep seemed like the best possible job. Before long, someone called out for the children to attend their lecture, but one of the boys did not feel like going. He dismissed the call and suggested that the person leave them alone. Hearing this, Jiraiya wondered if the academy students were skipping lectures. Since he had been sleeping peacefully, he decided he would tell them to slack off somewhere else instead. The boy remarked that he could finally concentrate, leaving Jiraiya confused. Looking annoyed, the boy complained that the book was far too difficult. His name was Luda's. Another child pointed out that Luda's was holding a white magic book and urged the others to come with him. She also criticized him for complaining simply because he failed to understand it. The girl's name was Sino. Irritated at being called stupid, Luda's demanded to know whether she understood the book herself. Another girl tried to stop the argument, saying fighting was pointless and that it would be better if someone simply taught them. Luda's replied that the lecturers only taught straight from textbooks and believed he would achieve better results by studying on his own. The girl explained that even if they asked her father and the others to teach them high-level magic, they would refuse. Listening to their conversation, Jiraiya realized he had been mistaken. They were not slacking off at all. Instead, the children were seriously studying. If they were that enthusiastic, then they must have a goal they wanted to reach, and he thought that was a good thing. Luda's wondered if there was anyone knowledgeable about magic besides the lecturers who could teach them. Jiraiya immediately thought it had nothing to do with him. Luda's decided they should force it anyway, believing that failure would not matter. The others were confused, and the girl tried to stop him. Insisting that everything would be fine because he believed he understood the formula, Luda's cast healing magic and thought it had succeeded. The next instant, his left arm was severed. Shocked, he watched blood pour from the wound as the children cried out in fear. Seeing the commotion, Jiraiya wondered what they were doing. Using magic without understanding its properties was dangerous. He reflected on what happened when healing magic was used on a healthy body. Without an injury to heal, the mana lost its purpose, and the excessive healing caused necrosis. Jiraiya silently cast healing magic himself. As Sino hurried to call a teacher, Luda's arm suddenly returned, completely restored. Confused, he found that his arm had been fully healed. The children realized someone had used magic and wondered who it had been. Jiraiya quietly climbed down and hid, deciding it was time to leave before they spotted him. If they found him, they would probably ask him to teach them, and that sounded like far too much work. The next day, Ludas became determined to defeat the old man and make him teach them magic. Sino wondered whether someone with such muddy eyes had really been the one who saved them the previous day, since he did not look strong at all. Ludas remained convinced that defeating him would be easy. Jiraiya sighed. In the end, various things had happened, and it was decided that he would have a duel with the students. After healing Ludas's arm, the students went to see the principal and apparently explained the situation to Aldi. From what he had heard, Aldi concluded that only Jiraiya could have performed such magic. The students then requested that Jiraiya teach them magic. Although he refused at first, he reluctantly agreed after setting a few conditions, eventually being coerced into accepting. As promised, if the students managed to wound him even slightly within 3 minutes, he would teach them magic. However, if they failed, they would never involve themselves with him again. Ludas called him an old man and warned him not to underestimate them. Annoyed, Jiraiya replied that he was only 18 years old and told them to stop calling him old. The students could hardly believe it. They had assumed he was 26 years old and wondered if he had aged far too quickly. Ludas decided to go first. Jiraiya found the idea annoying. It would be far too easy if they attacked one by one, so he told them to come at him all at once. Angered that Jiraiya continued to underestimate him, Ludas resolved to make him regret it. Ludas began chanting, invoking a raging gale that burned fiercely and consumed all beneath the heavens. As the second son of the Groil family, Ludas Groil commanded the unquenchable flames of purgatory to incinerate his enemy. He unleashed the spell at Jiraiya, believing he had succeeded. However, Jiraiya remained standing completely unharmed, having dealt with the high-level offensive fire magic with ease. Jiraiya understood why Ludas acted with such confidence, but the attack was nowhere near enough. Sino gave the signal, and all of the students cast magic together. Jiraiya recognized it as combination magic, a technique that linked multiple elemental spells into a single coordinated attack. Not only did it require a thorough understanding of the formulas, but it also demanded precise control over mana. Before the spell could be completed, however, their casting was interrupted. Jiraiya pointed out that their casting was too slow and mocked them, reminding them that an enemy would never wait for them to finish. The students were shocked. Jiraiya sighed again. At that moment, Sino smiled and attacked him from behind, catching his attention. He remarked that they were naive. Another boy also attacked from behind, and Jiraiya realized that the large-scale combination magic had merely been a distraction to set up an ambush. Sino continued pressing the attack, but Jiraiya declared that it was already over. The 3 minutes had expired, meaning he had won. Ludas was astonished, and the students realized the challenge had been far beyond their abilities. Jiraiya then asked why they were learning magic. They explained that they all belonged to high-ranking noble families as sons and daughters of the aristocracy. They dreamed of becoming adventurers and exploring the wider world, so they sought strength through magic. They did not want to become political tools through marriage or serve merely as replacements if anything happened to the firstborn son or daughter of their families. Sharing the same concerns, they had formed a party with the hope of embarking on exciting adventures and supporting one another. They openly shared that dream with him. Jiraiya immediately regretted asking. Even so, he decided that he would teach them, but only for a little while. The children were stunned. He quickly clarified that they should not misunderstand. He was doing it for his own sake, not for theirs. Watching them become adventurers without any real skill and die a dog's death would leave him feeling bad. The children were overjoyed and celebrated. They immediately wanted to know how he had erased their magic earlier, while Ludas also asked to be taught healing magic so he would not make the same mistake again. Jiraiya fell silent, thoroughly annoyed. Finally, he shouted for them to speak one at a time and to stop calling him teacher. Since he had agreed to teach them, they needed to quiet down. Jiraiya continued teaching them, explaining that although formulas could differ, the end result should remain the same. Ludas admitted that he did not understand, and Sino asked for a more detailed explanation. Annoyed, Jiraiya thought that being a lecturer was an absolute pain. He asked Ludas whether he wanted to learn the real reason Jiraiya had emerged completely unscathed during their duel. He explained that the output of his body reinforcement magic had been so overwhelmingly powerful compared to Ludas' attack that it had simply cancelled it out. He added that the result could vary depending on factors such as magic resistance or attribute compatibility, but in simple terms, the stronger magic would always win. Since body reinforcement was considered a beginner-level spell, Ludas could not understand why his advanced magic had failed. Jiraiya explained that it was because Ludas relied too much on chanting. Originally, magic had been far freer than it was in the present era. To demonstrate, Jiraiya opened a window and casually cast magic outside, causing the area beyond it to burst into flames. Ludas was stunned. Jiraiya explained that people mistakenly believed beginner magic was weak. As long as a person's mana output was sufficiently high, even basic magic possessed tremendous potential. It could even repel advanced-level spells. Having finished the explanation, he announced that the lesson was over for the day. As he left, Sino hurried after him. Jiraiya immediately stated that he would not answer questions outside class and reminded her not to call him teacher. She explained that it was not about that at all and instead asked what he intended to do about the enormous hole outside. Jiraiya stiffened. In the end, the incident grew into a major problem. It was decided that he would have to reimburse the Academy $30 million for the damages. Deeply upset, Jiraiya lamented that he wanted money instead. With only 10 days to come up with $30 million, he concluded that he had no choice but to win the magic tournament and pay the debt using the prize money. Even so, the thought of having to win sounded like a pain. Frustrated, he shouted that he wanted food. Still irritated, he wondered whether there was anywhere money flowed endlessly. At that moment, Eve appeared and told him to be quiet. Jiraiya greeted her after such a long time. She wondered whether he was trying to change his image. Realizing she was referring to his hair color, he remarked that it suited him. She immediately denied it. Eve then asked why he was at the academy. Jiraiya explained that many things had happened and that he was entering the magic tournament. Until it was over, he would be working at the academy. He then asked about the heroes' party, wondering whether she had been kicked out. Eve explained that she had not. She had simply graduated from the academy. Thinking she was only visiting, Jiraiya was surprised to learn that the principal had invited her to teach white magic. He could only conclude that the principal tried to recruit anyone he liked as a lecturer. Since Eve had not been removed from the party, Jiraiya asked about Reddy and Lena instead. Eve explained that Reddy had been quickly summoned to fight monsters, while Lena's whereabouts had been unknown ever since she left the register. Jiraiya figured that as long as he stayed away from dangerous places, he would not run into Reddy, though he thought the hero's job was certainly an exploitative, sweatshop-like system of employment. As for Lena, he suspected she had been the one who tried to kill the princess, although he had no proof. Eve then mentioned that the princess of Universia had asked whether she knew where he had gone and wondered if he had done something. Jiraiya grew nervous, insisted that nothing had happened, and claimed he did not remember. After a brief silence, he admitted it would be great if she simply did not tell anyone where he was. Without warning, Eve cast magic. Jiraiya instantly dropped to his knees and offered her a gift. She revealed that she had only been joking and assured him she would not say anything because it would be troublesome. Jiraiya thought it was surprising that she could even make joke. He remarked that he had known from the beginning she had no such intention, but she suddenly declared that perhaps she would tell them after all. Immediately lowering his head, he begged for forgiveness. She once again assured him that she would not tell anyone and told him to stop. Relieved, Jiraiya made her promise not to reveal his whereabouts. She agreed but also told him to stop talking to her. Since she had been at the academy first, if he disliked it, he should simply leave. Instead, Jiraiya sat beside her. Silence settled between them, making Jiraiya increasingly uncomfortable. He thought the atmosphere was awkward. After Eve stopped reading and wondered whether it was lunchtime, Jiraiya noticed how thin she was and wondered whether she survived on nothing but light and water. His assumption was shattered when he saw the enormous amount of food she had prepared. After offering thanks for the meal, she began eating. Jiraiya could hardly believe it and was astonished by the size of her appetite. When she noticed him staring, she told him to stop looking at her. He apologized, but continued watching as she ate at an incredible speed. She once again told him not to stare. The awkward mood continued. Since there was still time left and he saw no point in moving elsewhere, Jiraiya decided to retreat into his own world by distracting himself with magic tools. Using magic, he produced a pair of boots. As he thought about how to perform maintenance on them, he realized he had completely forgotten the procedure. Eve noticed the boots and asked whether they were wind boots. Jiraiya confirmed that they were. She reached over for them, making him feel awkward because she had moved so close. She instructed him to pour mana into the boots before placing her hand on them. Small wings appeared on both sides. She explained that maintenance could not be performed unless the boots were activated first. Otherwise they would break. Jiraiya thanked Eve. He had to admit that, with how knowledgeable she was, she must also be obsessed with magic tools. Eve quickly realized he shared the same obsession. They looked at each other before shaking hands. Jiraiya then mentioned that the hero's birthday festival was approaching and asked whether she planned to apply for admission to the artifact show. He had applied every year, but his applications had never been accepted. Although he was not especially familiar with the festival, he knew that Magicasmea had established it to honor heroes. Since the hero had red hair, the townspeople celebrated by wearing red wigs, and numerous events were held throughout the festival. Sighing with tears in his eyes, Jiraiya watched as Eve reached into her bag and handed him a ticket. He was stunned when she revealed that she actually had 2 tickets to the artifact show. Unable to believe it, he wondered how she had obtained them. Eve explained that she knew one of the organizers, who had given them to her. Jiraiya declared that obtaining tickets through such underhanded means disgraced her as a fellow magic tool enthusiast and insisted he had no intention of attending the show through such shameful method. Even so, he immediately dropped to his knees and begged for one. His actions completely contradicted his words. Eve said she did not mind giving him a ticket, leaving Jiraiya unable to believe his luck. However, she wanted something in return. Jiraiya immediately accepted, saying there was no problem and that he would do it. Eve then stated that she wanted him to go shopping with her. Jiraiya was left completely shocked. Eve told Jiraiya that she wanted him to go shopping with her. Confused, he wondered why. She explained that she wanted to buy clothes. Jiraiya thought it was only natural since she was a girl who cared about fashion. He admitted that it was not surprising and that he had simply been wondering. Eve then revealed that the clothes were for Rei to see. Curious, Jiraiya wondered who Rei was. Eve explained that Rei was the person she loved. Jiraiya immediately confirmed that the tickets could still be exchanged. Since they were a pair, he had assumed she intended to attend the artifact show with Rei. Eve admitted that she had planned to, but she did not think she would be able to go this year. Jiraiya sensed that there were complicated circumstances behind it. He asked whether it would be enough if he simply accompanied her shopping, suggesting they go after class. Eve agreed, but added one condition: he would have to pay for everything she bought. Jiraiya could hardly believe it and made sure she meant that he would be paying. Eve confirmed it. Although he barely had any money, he knew that tickets to the artifact show were extremely valuable among magic tool enthusiasts. He might never get another opportunity like this. He accepted the condition but said he could not do it immediately. Eve told him they could go shopping after the magic tournament instead. Left with no real choice, Jiraiya began wondering how he would manage. He doubted that $35,000 would be enough. He also still owed money to Aldi, so even winning the tournament prize might not cover everything. He did not have enough money before the tournament, and low-ranking missions paid very little. He briefly considered borrowing money from Char before deciding that he should not let her spoil him. As he walked, he suddenly noticed two girls behind Char's store. Finding it strange, he remembered that Chartet should already have been closed for the night. One of them was the Demon Lord. Yuri enthusiastically cheered for Luna to do her best while Luna sat on Yuri's shoulders. Luna told her to lower her voice, and Yuri agreed. As Luna reached toward the window, Jiraiya wondered what they were doing. Yuri declared that the paradise of paradise lay inside. Luna complained that even after disguising themselves as humans, they had still been forced to sneak in and insisted that she could not give up. Yuri encouraged her and wondered why she did not simply break through the wall instead. Luna immediately reminded her never to harm humans. Remaining silent, Jiraiya approached them. Startled, Yuri and Luna jumped in surprise. Luna hastily insisted that it was not what it looked like and that she was not a thief. Then memories of the past surfaced, and she recognized him as a demon. Terrified, she screamed. Yuri quickly calmed her down, pointing out that although his eyes were still cloudy, he no longer had black hair and was therefore a different person. Still frightened, Luna looked at him while Jiraiya silently stared back. Jiraiya asked what they were doing, remarking that they were being rather rude. Since they had opened the window, they should at least explain themselves. Thinking quickly, Luna claimed that she had forgotten to close the window and had only come back to shut it. Jiraiya wondered whether she worked there, reasoning that it would explain everything. Luna immediately agreed, claiming to be an employee. Jiraiya found the explanation suspicious. He mentioned that he knew the manager of the shop and did not remember ever seeing an employee like her. Luna froze, realizing she had been trapped by the question. Yuri praised him as a human of remarkable intelligence before grandly introducing Luna as the Demon Lord, the one destined to rule the world and conquer everything, a unique existence before whom humans like Jiraiya would one day become livestock. Jiraiya only looked confused. Luna hurriedly covered Yuri's mouth and begged her to stop, insisting that Yuri call her Luna instead of Demon Lord. Jiraiya concluded that they were probably just playing a game. Long ago, he himself had enjoyed pretending to be a hero. Seeing their beautiful faces and worn-out clothes, he guessed they might be daughters of some fallen noble family. Whatever the case, neither of them looked particularly happy. After thinking for a moment, Jiraiya decided that stealing was still a crime. He stopped them before they could leave and handed them a basket filled with sweets. Assuming they simply wanted snacks, he told them to take them and hurry home because it was already late and their parents would be worried. Luna's face brightened as she wondered whether she could really have so many sweets. Jiraiya figured it would be fine once he explained it to Char later. He remembered that Char had told him he could freely take sweets from the shop and had even entrusted him with a duplicate key to the back entrance. Deeply grateful, Luna declared that he was a good person and that she would never forget the favor. She offered him money in return, but Jiraiya refused. Instead, he simply asked them not to steal again. Smiling warmly, Luna hugged the basket. She admitted that she had wanted to eat the sweets at least once before she died. She had lined up since morning on many occasions but had never won the lottery required to buy the candy. After losing her wallet, she had even sold her clothes and believed theft had become her only option. Hearing that, Jiraiya realized they were even more unfortunate than he had first thought. Luna remarked that humans were good people after all and completely different from the Black Demon. Yuri wondered whether a human like Jiraiya might actually earn the Demon Lord's favor, but Luna quickly stopped her. As they prepared to leave, Jiraiya watched them go. Luna waved goodbye and promised that she would meet the red-haired person again someday. Declaring her full name as Luna Dulk Eucharis, she vowed never to forget the debt she owed him for the rest of her life. Luna and Yuri walked away. Watching them leave, Jiraiya thought they were strange girls. Then he felt as though he had forgotten something. Moments later, he remembered his urgent need for money. Since the magic tournament was a major event, he suddenly considered participating in the gambling surrounding it. He immediately ran after them. Calling out to Yuri and Luna, he stopped the pair. Both looked back in surprise as Jiraiya informed them that he wanted them to repay the debt they owed him. They could only stare at him in confusion. After that, magic brooms manufactured by Matita flew through the streets while wagons were pulled by creatures created through magic. As expected of a nation devoted to magic, magical technology could be seen everywhere. Spirits gathered naturally because of the abundant magic and the atmosphere itself. Char noticed that Jiraiya did not visit Magicasmea very often. She pointed toward a food stall selling hero-shaped snacks and wanted to try some. Jiraiya saw the long line and told her to go ahead while he headed to the tournament reception desk. Char agreed, realizing she would not be able to accompany him. Looking around, Jiraiya was impressed by the lively surroundings. The tournament would begin soon. He wondered what kind of people would be participating and who his first opponent would be. Determined to earn the prize money, he resolved to do whatever it took to win.